All right, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to bring our PPRTA regular session to order here. I'll call us to order and establish a quorum. I see that we do have a quorum. I got a thumbs up too with that. And with that, the next item number 2 is approval of the agenda. So I know in our discussion at the agenda prep that we want to amend today's agenda, and I'll turn it over to Rick to describe what we're
Thank you,
talking
Mr.
about.
Chair. I'll start it off and then Gail and Josh will amplify. The city particularly has a time-sensitive right-of-way acquisition for a PPRTA 3 capital project. Of course, PPRTA 3 doesn't start until a year from now, but the city would like to spend its own money to acquire the railroad right-of-way for the North Nevada project now. That spend their own money now and have an IGA to be reimbursed in 2025, very similar to what the board just approved with the Copper Ridge project. County also has one. Josh can fill us in on those details. So Jennifer Ivey, your board attorney, has asked for a board approval, either an official motion or a thumbs up around the table, before she begins the process to prepare the 2 IGAs separately, PPRTA and city, PPRTA and county, for these advances that each the city and the county would spend now and be reimbursed in 2025. So with that, I'll turn it over to Gail to amplify if she'd like.
Do we want to do that now, or we just want to add it to item 8C on the agenda and we can go through it?
If you're good enough with my explanation to get it.
I'm just looking forward to getting the gavel turned over here, so I'm trying to move us along.
So yeah, as the board is satisfied with my explanation to amend the agenda to add 8C for this topic, then yes.
Everybody good with just adding it and we discussing it more when we get to that item 8C? All right. Very good. With that, with the amendment of today's agenda, I would ask for a motion to approve today's agenda with the amendment.
I'll move to approve Mayor Dixon as amended.
I have a motion to amend.
I'll second John Graham.
Mayor Graham in seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Now to the fun part. Item number 3, appointment, reappointment of board members and selection of officers. It's my understanding everyone has written confirmation, according to Jennifer, that everyone on the board, their particular municipalities have selected and voted, and we are all here. And who's online that is online today? Paul's on there in Lohinas. Okay. All right. So looks like we're all here. And with that, the next piece of that is the selection of officers. The process for doing that today is I will ask for nominations for the next chair, and it has to come from the county. And we will get the nomination, either one or more, and we will vote on that. And then the new chair will take over. I will slide out of the way just for a moment, and then the new chair will call for nominations from the city council members for a vice chair. We'll get a nomination or nominations from that. And the new chair will then call for the vote on that. So that's the process we're going to take. With that, I open the floor for nominations to the chair of the PPRTA.
This is Commissioner Gonzalez. I nominate Holly Williams to be chair.
Second.
Well, we have a motion and a second on that. Thank you, Commissioner Lohinas Gonzalez. I appreciate that. And second from Carrie Gottner. And with that, are there any other? Well, there's only 2 more of you. If are the nominations closed? Yes, the nominations are closed for the new chair. And with that, I see that Commissioner Holly Williams has been nominated. So with that, I'll get if she has any desire to make a few comments or not.
Nope. Happy to serve.
Thank you very much. With that, we have a nomination, we have a motion and a second. And with that, any discussion out there? If not, do we Rick and Jennifer, we can do a voice vote because we just have
Yes.
one person. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, that motion passes. We have a new chair. Commissioner Holly Williams is the chair. I will hand the gavel over to
Okay.
the chair. And I'll just sit here for a moment until we do the vice chair.
All right, the vice chair will be from the city of Colorado Springs. I will call for nominations for the vice chairman.
I would like to nominate Councilmember Dave Donaldson to be the vice chair of the PPRTA.
Go ahead. I'll second John Graham.
Okay, are there any other nominations? Then we'll move the nominations. We'll have nominations close, and everybody in favor of Dave Donaldson as vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Go ahead.
Third officer is board secretary.
And
Could I just say one thing after that?
yes, Dave, you can give a nice speech.
I'd like to give a maybe 30-minute speech. Would that be appropriate?
Yeah.
We can revote.
I'd just like to say that if all elections were that easy, I'd run for Congress.
Oh, there's only three. It's three. Okay, there's 3 open seats. Councilmember Donald, there's 3 open congressional seats.
District.
Yeah, ours
Pick
is
the
all-
one you want. Yeah.
Okay, and would someone please nominate Rick Sonnenberg as secretary?
Go ahead, Vice Chair.
I would nominate Rick as secretary.
I second. Randy Helms.
Okay, any other nominations? All
Rick
in-
who?
Oh, yeah, don't know. Okay, all nominations are closed. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Rick, that was a squeaker.
With that, I'm going to move over to Dave's chair, and Dave's going to move over here.
I mean, I get to just stay put
Sure,
and I can just
sure,
sit
why not?
next to the.
I can run it from.
Oh, yeah, Holly's going to slide to here, and Dave's going to move into Holly's.
Yeah, I want the soft chair.
Move over here with all the mayors.
Mayor Rowe. Okay,
They're
thank
quiet.
you all for that. Item number 4 is public comment. Are there any members of the public present or online who would like to make comments? Okay, there are no members here to make comments. So item number 4 is done. Item number 5 is the approval of the meetings from December 13th. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Also move Mayor Dixon. I'll second John Graham.
Okay, we have a motion and second to approve the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Item number 6 is the monthly report from our Citizens Advisory Committee report. Jim,
Good afternoon. Happy New Year, everyone. Jim Godfrey, Chair of the CAC. So I'd like to give you the report of last week's meeting. I would like to proudly announce that I was reelected Chair of the CAC for another year. Larry Tobias as first Vice Chair and Ed Dills as second Vice Chair. I'd just like to add that I'm proud to be part of this organization. And part of what this organization does for the community. And I'm very proud to be part of the CAC and head that up. So I take that with great honor.
congratulations
Thank you.
to all 3 of you.
So during the course of our meeting, we had City of Colorado Springs brought forward 8 contracts. Gail did a great job of discussing those. There was no ongoing or contentious discussion, and we recommend approval of the city's contracts as presented. The city of Manitou Springs. If you remember last month, we had an issue that we withdrew from the agenda because there was a piece of information at the CAC that was not available, and we recommended postponing that, and we revisited that. You'll get into that discussion during 8B, so I won't get into a lot of detail right now. But we're recommending further discussion regarding the RTA funding for EV chargers. So we'll bring that up unless you want me to get into it further at the moment. Let's see, what else? In your packet also is my CAC report, annual report to the board on our activities for the year in terms of people coming and going and decisions and activities and whatnot. So if you have any questions about that, I'd be glad to address those. And then also in packet is Rick's staff review of all the projects and the invoices that were presented by the member governments. And Mr. Chair and Ms. Chair, and I would like to, as you start in to the discussion on 8B with Manitou, I would like the opportunity to return to the podium and contribute to that conversation.
Okay, thank you. I think that works very well. Are there any questions for Mr. Godfrey?
Just one question. And Jim, are there any openings on the CAC right now?
Yes, thank you for reminding me of that. There are openings on the CAC. And at the same time, with Richard Robertson passing, the county has now a vacancy as well. And Rick discussed with me, you want to discuss this, or we discussed, and we would let out of the 3 or 4 people that have applied, we thought we would let the county select first among those available candidates, being that some of those wanted to be a county rep for that. And then we would reconvene the subcommittee with you folks once the county's made that decision. And so we're holding off until we hear what the county selection process was.
Okay, it looks like Rick had a comment.
So yes, there are 3 openings. One is the counties, to fill Richard Robertson. Then on the the at-large and at-large alternate side, we have 1 at-large regular and 1 at-large alternate. Those incumbents' terms expired, but they've requested to be reappointed. But we had 4 additional, we advertised, and we have 4 additional. So there's 6 applicants for the 2 at the 1 at-large regular, 1 at-large alternate. But 4 of those 6 also applied for the county's Richard Robertson seat. So we have crossover. We had a discussion with Ingrid in the commissioner's office and decided to let the county select first, particularly since 4 of the 6 have applied at both. So let the county go first. Then the PPRTA would go second. And the board policy has set up that there's a subcommittee of the board chair, board vice chair, and the CAC chair to review the application. So the prior chair and vice chair had reviewed the application. So now the new chair and vice chair will be called upon to review the applications after the county makes its selection to fill Richard Robertson's seat.
Oh, okay.
That answer your question, sir?
It did, thank you.
All right. So if that's the end of the Citizens Advisory Committee report for now, I would take a motion to approve items 6A and 6B.
Yolanda Avila, move to approve.
Roland Gardine, second motion. Thank you.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and just taking a moment of, I guess, chairman privilege, Dan Jablan is on the line, and I know he's getting busy today. So if we could take a moment, we'll move him out of order. Dan, tell us what's going on.
Why, thank you very much. The session has been canceled because nobody's interested in it, so we're all good now. I think we did pretty good today. It only took 39 minutes for our first game delay from a protest in the House lobby. But overall went pretty smoothly. They moved into a committee today. We had the opening speeches. I haven't gone through them yet. right now, I think 52 bills have dropped. I'm on the lookout and I've been looking around Rick's instructions to for a visitors bureau sales tax bill. I've talked to all the JBC members. None of them know it's coming. I did see it on CML's list of bills. We'll reach out to them, but no one seems to know anything about that right now. I did take a glance at the bills real quick before I'm heading to this next meeting, and nothing really struck me that's going to impact us, at least in the first 52 bills that have been dropped right now. I do expect a session of a lot of starts and stops. Literally, we were on the floor for 39 minutes. I say they were on the floor for 39 minutes before they were forced to take a recess. So I think tomorrow will even be more telling. I think what's interesting, we'll see how this plays out. Every day last week, there was a rumor that there was going to be a vote of no confidence for the speaker, but that did not happen today. So I think we're going to have to see how that plays out as the session moves along. I thought all the speeches were great. I think House Minority Leader Mike Lynch and Paul Undine, of course, did a great job explaining what their role was and what they were going to do. The Senate President and the Speaker both said all the correct things during their speech. So I think, starting tomorrow, things will get even a little bit more interesting. As you know, this week will be a little slow. We have to have the governor's speech, the Supremes will speak. Then we have holiday on Monday, and then next Tuesday will really start getting cranked up. But even by next Tuesday, I would expect between 125 bills to have been dropped. All three of the first pre-file bills should be going, or the pre-file bills will be coming. So I'll keep a close eye out on anything that involves our funding and make sure that we stay right on top of that. But that's kind of where it's going. I expect a really contentious session moving forward. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, do we have any questions? All right. Thank you, Dan. We appreciate it. Enjoy your office there in the stairs.
Thank you very much. See ya.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Let's go on to item number 7, monthly financial reports.
All right, Lisa Corey, Finance Manager for the PPRTA. The month I would be reporting is the sales and use tax received in November. The full financial packet isn't done yet. I will email it out as soon as it's done, but I can give you some rough numbers. For the totals, we are looking to be about 750,000 over budget for November. And then looking at November, I guess it's not this year, last year, November of 23 compared to November of 22, we're about 250,000 over. So this is the first time since February that we've received more sales and use tax in 23 than 22.
Okay, that was all my Amazon purchases, so you're welcome.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Looks good.
All right, so we will look forward to seeing those whole financial reports when they are available. So item number 8, the City of Colorado Springs capital projects.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Gail Sturdivant, Acting Public Works Director for the City of Colorado Springs. We have 8 contracts for the board's consideration today. The first call is for PPRTA on-call capital maintenance project. We went through an RFP process a couple years ago. This would be exercising the 3rd option year underneath that contract for TP Enterprises in the amount of $401,939.76. And that is for ongoing maintenance for PPRTA capital projects. City's second contract is for project and construction management software services. A couple years ago, the city went through an RFP process where we had over a dozen respondents for project and construction management software. We selected Arrigo Software Technologies. This is the second renewal underneath that 5-year renewal contract. The total cost is $110,000 and the PPRTA portion for that is $66,250. The city's third contract is for on-call traffic signal installation and major repairs. The city went through an RFP process. We had 3 respondents, 2 were selected, C&D Electric and Sturgeon Electric. We're proposing to put on-call contracts in place for 2024, an amount of up to $2 million to be executed based on task orders as needed to come and do major, either new intersection signal install or significant maintenance on major intersection installs. This is the first year contract and it does have 4 option years available to exercise in the future. City's fourth contract is to supply traffic signal pole boxes and cabinet bases. This is for materials only. The city went through an RFP process. We had 2 respondents, 1 selected with Wesco. We were proposing to put this contract in place for up to $300,000 and the city would get those signal materials as needed and under purchase orders issued underneath that contract. And then we would use those materials to integrate into transportation projects within the city as needed. City's 5th contract is somewhat similar, but it is for traffic signal wire and cables. Again, we went through an RFP process. We had 2 respondents. We did select both in this case. And we would be issuing a contract for up to $250,000 to each of those vendors, Wesco and TW Cable. And again, we would get that material based on purchase orders that would be issued against that contract as needed for incorporation into transportation projects around the city. The city's 6th contract is for on-call concrete task order that would be issued to Lucky Dog Construction. It is to do concrete work on Cascade Avenue between Uinta and Platt Street. This is a maintenance contract, but it is over the threshold that we do come to ask for board approval for this task order. It's for $212,532.06. The city's 7th contract is for pre-overlay contract concrete that can be used for 2C and PPRTA funding. The city went through a very extensive RFP process with the concrete vendors in the area. We had 13 respondents. We selected 7 to do on-call concrete work. The 7 vendors are listed in your packet, but I'll go through them. J. Torres, Full Tilt, Fitterswald Irrigation and Landscaping, AA Construction, Blue Ridge Construction, CMS of Colorado Springs, and Even Pricer. These contracts are all initially for a $0 amount, and then they would be issued task orders as demanded. I will say most of the work is paid for under 2C, but we do on occasion use these same contractors to use PPRTA funding to go and address concrete work needs. And the city's last contract is for bulk fueling services. This does come back to PPRTA board. I believe it's every 3 or 4 years. The city went through an RFP process through Fleet Services to provide fuel for vehicles that PPRTA funds are mostly used for some maintenance work, where it's PPRTA related maintenance. We use it for transit, and on occasion we'll use it for capital work, but most often not. These contracts we would propose for with Chief Petroleum, Synergy Petroleum, and Often Petroleum. So these contracts will be put in place again for the initial $0 value as needed. And then the city does a monthly pricing process to establish the rates. So we have the projections based on what we anticipate from these 3 vendors. And they get used, PPRTA funds are used only as needed for PPRTA activities underneath those. We would estimate that for the maintenance to be less than $50,000 for this next year. Transit tends to vary, and then transit are paid for mostly by grant funds, but we do use PPRTA funding for local match. So those are the city's 8 contracts. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Are there any questions? Okay, seeing no questions, is there a motion to approve?
I would move approval of the Colorado Springs, City of Colorado Springs contracts as presented. John Graham.
Randy Helms, second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, those pass. 8B. Go ahead, Rick, first.
Madam Chair, the PPRTA CAC is recommending that the board postpone this item today, pending the CAC's request to the board for direction, particularly board direction back to the CAC, to begin preparing a draft board policy regarding the PPRTA funding of EV chargers, because with the current PPRTA 2 city program fund, and then when we get to PPRTA 3 a year from now, there's at least 4 or 5 program funds, one of which could be used by all 6 member governments to request PPRTA funding for EV chargers. Since this is a potentially exploding potential volume of EV charger requests, before a decision is made on Manitou specific request, it's the CAC is recommending that the board direct the CAC to begin preparing a draft board policy on EV chargers, because it's going to become such a potentially large issue in the future.
Okay, and first of all, did the mayor wish to say anything?
Well, not in any detail. I think probably this is a good discussion to have. And as I think about this, I guess my main concern is we were hoping to have the chargers in place for our summer tourist business. Now, I think we could move funds around, so we'll get that done, and we need to get it done.
Mhm.
So I would kind of advise this board that maybe we don't. I'm not personally asking for you to move fast. I would rather see this board come up with a good answer for everybody into the future. So that said, if you need time, then I think Manitou we've got I think a plan B. So that'd just be my thought, but I'd
Okay.
be happy to hear the thoughts from the CAC.
All right, go ahead, Jim.
Thank you, Jim Godfrey on the CAC. We had a very robust conversation about the EV chargers. And I brought up the fact that I felt like that given the potential going forward of more funding for EV chargers from other municipalities, rather than prove a project without a policy, that we should develop a policy first versus getting caught in a situation where we've approved a project, someone else comes forward, the policy doesn't allow it, and they say, well, so-and-so got it. So we had a discussion about the potential for this and why we felt like it was important. There are a couple of funds, as Rick mentioned, in PPRTA 3 that are federal grant funds. Manitou does have a federal grant as part of the funding for this and going forward. And so we felt like that we've got that fund, we've got the availability to use that, but we don't have a policy in terms. So there were issues like, is it on public right of way? Is it on private property? Is the pool really a Manitou property? A revenue that may be generated from these things that in terms of fees? None of that we've addressed as a body. And we felt like that it would be prudent for us. And as the mayor said, their desire would be to do this, but that the grant is good until October, that it would be money well invested to move forward and have this discussion among yourselves, and then and the legal counsel, and then direct us to put together something that we could bring forward and discuss going forward, so that we're clear on what the bounds are, the boundaries and the guardrails of these types of projects going forward. And so our recommendation to you was to postpone a decision on Manitou's project with concurrence of Dole Cabranic. And so we're presenting that you today. We're looking for some guidance in terms of what you would like for us to do. And we will follow that along with what legal counsel proposes to do.
Okay, does anyone have any guidance?
Oh, I don't have guidance.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't have guidance,
All right.
but I have a thought. When I was going over this with Rick, it just occurred to me that this body and other bodies are always going up about and over about local control. You know, they're trying to take our local control. And I also know that there's a question about whether this is utility or not, but it seems like Manitou requested this. And we as a body want to take control over Manitou and what they would like to do with this, because they've been losing. How much money have you been losing, or for how long, on these EV chargers? Because they're not paying for them, right? People are just charging up and not paying for them.
Right. To speak to that, what's a question here? We have 3 chargers located at our swimming pool, and those are free. So you can plug in and charge all day. And the city of Manitou eats the cost on that. Now, we do have one charging station it's a charge point station, and people do pay for that. So, our thought would be to upgrade the facilities at the pool, and basically we would have people, users would actually be paying for the electricity. And to give you an idea of what we charge, we mark up the Clark Springs utilities by 15%. So, and it depends on the time of day. So, middle of the day when you're paying high dollar, I think it's probably something like about 42 cents a kilowatt hour, somewhere in that neighborhood. I would have to check, but it's in that neighborhood. So,
Okay.
and it's probably not a huge concern for us right now in terms of what it's costing, but yeah, we would like to provide the service. And I mean, we're looking into the future. We don't want to take a loss for forever, but I think it's, again, it would be better to think this through and do it right and have something that everybody could live with, rather than try and do it fast and come back and say,
Well,
we should
I
consider
appreciate
the
your
details.
sacrifice, but I just think we could consider passing this, and with the I don't know, indication that we will look at a policy going forward. But I'm not kidding. It just hit me. It's like, we always want to control. I mean, we don't want any control from anybody else. City doesn't want control from the county or state or feds. And here, I feel like this is like, we're not practicing what we preach. So, but you're a good sport. And if you're willing to do that, I would support. I think that we could go support the city and what they want, the Manitou, and then look for policy. But if you're okay with that, then I'm just speaking my mind.
Okay. Yeah, no, and I think probably all of us have seen situations where we inherited situations that had not been thought through clearly, and we regret that. So I think, again, coming up with something that's well considered. Jim, you made the point about, is this going to be on public or private property? Manitou, our applications would be on public property, of course, and there's other details. It's a new venture for us, as it is for pretty much everybody else.
Go ahead, Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you. So I think that there's several things to consider from my point of view on this. Just to answer a bit to Councilwoman Avila's comments, we are not separate bodies here. And that has been a topic that we continue to talk about here in terms of looking at things regionally. But when the voters approved this, they didn't approve Manitou, and they didn't approve, Colorado Springs, they didn't approve the county. So we already given the authority to act on behalf of this body. So I don't think we're really trying to take anything away here. But I think I had questions that I certainly asked Jennifer Ivey about what are the legal ramifications of how we are able to use these funds, both from a state statute perspective, as well as our commitment to the voters' perspective. My question was, can we pay for gasoline stations? Can we pay for people's gasoline? And if that's not the case, there are a lot of questions here about the implications of what our voters approve, what they expect. I can tell you that I do not think the constituents that I represent would think that this was an appropriate use. I think that my constituents are very frustrated at the state of Colorado for continuing to say that we are putting money into roads and road infrastructure and then spend money on things like EV chargers and kind of a green agenda. I'm also going to say I saw a post from our governor that said, hey, you can get over $20,000 in tax credits for an electric vehicle. And I think people are tired of their tax dollars being paid for specific agendas. So I do not think that this is an appropriate use, and I would defer if anyone wants to have Jennifer Ivy answer the question under the state statute. But I do not think that this is an appropriate use of PPRTA funds. I stood before the voters and I said, this is a good taxing entity that will use your dollars for roads. And I know we have some transit. I know we have some of those other things. But I do not feel like I would be fulfilling the duty that I told voters when I asked them to vote for PPRTA 3 if we proceed down this road. So I would be in favor of us having a discussion about whether we want to even entertain the idea of funding EV chargers in the future, not just on private or public property and the nuances around it, but is that something we want to take on specifically because I think there is some legal risk and I do think we will get sued.
Okay, go ahead.
Along the same line of statements, I was curious if the EV chargers were actually voted upon in RTA 3. Were they included, or is this something outside of what was voted on?
Or which program fund might they qualify in?
Say, Rick can correct me.
Nothing specific of that exact term, but there are several program funds, but specifically the state and local discretionary grant fund that's in the collaborative section that can be used by any of the 6-member governments. That they would have to move some of their money, get board approval to move some of their money into that program fund. Then they'd have to get a federal grant, but there's lots of that for EV chargers. So any of the 6. So to answer your question specifically, no, the word or term EV chargers is not listed in PPRTA 3, but there are program funds that at least one that all 6-member governments could use if the board wants to entertain that. So the board potentially would have to make the decision if they agree that it complies with the RTA state law under the definition of regional transportation system. And then so that could be a yes or no. If the board says yes, it's eligible under state statute, and Jennifer can elaborate on what I'm saying. If the board says no, then you're done. Then no EV chargers. If the board says yes, that the board interprets that it's eligible in the state law, then you go to the capital or maintenance. If you're doing a brand new installation, that's capital. So then for the PPRTA purposes, for any of the member governments, you have to find a capital project that was voter approved in November 22 that seems to imply, or that the board interprets is implied to be able to be used for EV chargers. So that's the next speed bump to get over for the board approval. Yes or no of the use of program funds for EV chargers. The board could say, yes, it's eligible under state law, but the board could say, no, it's not eligible in program funds. So the board has the ultimate decision. The board can say yes or no at the state law. The board could say yes or no at the capital program fund stage. So, and then if the board says yes to both, then we need to get into all sorts of details like any governmental facility, any swimming pool, any rec center, any senior center, Fountain Valley Senior Center. How about churches? It's a slippery slope to get into thousands of these things. So that's why several folks suggested we get into a board policy to look at the slippery slope and see how far, where do you want to draw the line?
Okay, trustee Felt has some comments.
I know
No,
Commissioner
we're
Gonzalez
not.
had his hand raised.
Oh, so Commissioner Gonzalez has comments.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm still kind of taking some of this in, but some of my concerns go back around the, same thing. We're 10 years out from the next vote, but credibility of the program, are we spending it on money that people thought it would be spent on? In terms of the Manitou, if these were chargers or batteries for Manitou's buses, I think that makes sense, right? Because it's part of their I think what the average voter might anticipate be a necessity for the city as part of how they take care of their roads and transportation, which if anybody's gone over there, sees that the buses are key to getting around a large part of their town. I don't necessarily think the average voter thought this was something money would be spent on. So I don't know if it's limited. We got a kind of a generic maybe not answer, but I don't think the public thought this was what they would be spent on, and that does concern me. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Godfrey.
Commissioner Geithner brought up a point. As members of the CAC will tell you that one of the things that I see as a foundation of what we must do is we must be able to be accountable to the citizens that voted for this program. That's the part of the citizens' oversight, and that's the role that we take very, very seriously. And so that is paramount in my book, that whatever the decision is that we can defend it and that it's justifiable and that any one of us, you, can defend it to your population. And the CAC was unanimous in this discussion in the vote about bringing this forward and having this discussion before we approve the project. So I forgot to add that. Sorry.
And I did have just one more question. The city has charging stations in their garages. How are those paid for? Is that the parking enterprise?
Yes, Madam Chair, this is Gail Sertman, City of Colorado Springs. So yes, EV chargers are part of the enterprise, and I would have to check on those specifically. They are either solely operated and owned by the parking enterprise or in collaboration with utilities.
Okay, and then all of our buses are natural gas?
No, we don't have any natural gas buses. We have mostly diesel buses. We are looking at diversifying our fleet. This is one of the things too. We currently have 4 battery electric buses. We were supposed to be receiving 4 chargers to go along with those buses. Those happen to be the buses with our first pilot we were having some challenges with. So I would say, and when you look at PPRTA 3 for us, for a vehicle, what is it? What do we call it? The Transit Fleet Supplement is a program in PPRTA 3. In the description that we prepared in advance of the ballot, it was for those transit vehicles, and they could be diesel, hybrid, or some kind of electric charging, and it would support any kind of complementary accessories needed, such as a charger for those buses. I would anticipate for the city of Colorado Springs, any electric chargers would be associated with our parking enterprise now and into the future.
Okay, but you do have a program fund that would account for it for fleet vehicles and buses?
Only transit.
Only
vehicles.
transit vehicles. Okay. All right. So it sounds like, go ahead, Rick.
So to stand partially corrected in Mayor, in your question, does the term EV chargers appear in PPRTA 3 capital list that the voter approved? In that list, the answer is no. But in the city's detail that's not legally bound, that was provided in the spring and summer of 22, leading up to the voting on the city's detail according to Gail's better memory than mine. It specifically says EV chargers
It's,
or?
no, it does, it
Pikes?
says, including supporting infrastructure technologies to fuel and charge.
For MMT buses, not public use. So let me partially modify my answer. The term EV chargers is not in the capital project list that the voters saw and approved.
Okay.
But it is implied for transit.
So then if I could ask Jennifer, is the first thing we want to do to have some sort of legal opinion on this before we send it to the CAC?
So when this first came up, I did look at the definition, I think as Rick was mentioning under the statute, and sort of highlighted that and sent it back to the staff team saying like, okay, well, here's where I could piece this together to say, I think you could count EV chargers within this definition. I mean, from time to time, there have been things that like are not enumerated in the longest definition ever. If you've ever looked at the definition of regional transportation systems. But yes, I mean, I think a threshold question for the board is, how do you want to look at this? And how far do you want to take a legal opinion? Do you want me to provide like a memorandum that pieces this out? Do you want to just take a look at what I provided, which is this sort of cobbled together, if you can just see the yellow across the room, definition of, well, here's where it would fit. You know, maybe this is a discussion to actually agenda for next month. And we start with, here's my preliminary thoughts. And then the board can look at, well, do you want some sort of more formal work product that we can consider an executive session? You know, does the board think, okay, yes, this looks good. We'd like the CAC to study this further. I think there's a number of different roads we can take to answer your question with not really an answer, but a lot of different directional signs.
That was definitely an attorney answer.
I know. I did a really good job of attorneying that one, didn't I? I mean, to put it short, very succinctly, I can't say, yes, there's nothing in this definition that says EV chargers, right? So there's no black or white answer to this.
Okay. Does someone have direction? Go ahead, Councilmember Donaldson.
Madam Chair, I think it'd be kind of appropriate, based on what I've heard, to hold a decision on the EV chargers for Manitou Springs and have this on the agenda next month for discussion with just the interpretation from legal without a full-blown opinion, but just perhaps what's in yellow, which I can't read from over here.
Yeah, I don't blame you, but yeah, I think it'd be helpful for the board to see sort of how that gets cobbled together and look at the world's longest definition.
Yeah, because it sounds to me like EV chargers are mentioned in relation to transit, in relation to buses, which they can be, the funds, PPRT funds can be used for that purpose. But I think we'd want to hear more. Does it look appropriate to use it for personal vehicles, not associated with transit? So my suggestion.
Okay, and I would just add to that then, so going that direction, also taking the time to each of us think, if there were to be a policy, what would we instruct the CAC that we would want to be in it? I would certainly think that if it's, you know, using the money to put in an EV charging station, maybe it would be to get the station going only. And then after that, the station has to be fee supported or something such as that. So if each of us can be thinking, if we're going to instruct the CAC to make a policy, what would we put in it? Public property, private property, some of those things, so that we can try and give them as much instruction as possible next month. Because I hadn't thought about the question at all until today.
Profit on it. Does RTA get part of that, or does the municipality keep it?
That is true. It's going to be fee-based and you make a profit. So those are just some things to think about. Interesting question. And then if, like, maybe we could stick in Gail's description that she had mentioned was in the proposed language from last year too, so we know what was in the descriptive stuff, not in the actual ballot text. Although I don't think that was ever clear to the voters at any point in time. So, all right, with that, I guess we take a motion to postpone this item until next month.
Madam Chair, Roland Gardine, Mayor Pro Tem. We're getting cart before the horse. It's a pun, but anyway. I make that motion and we table this until next month.
Okay, so we'll table it until next month.
Madam Chair, does that mean we table it and not ask the CAC to consider it? Is that what you're?
No, the CAC needs to,
Okay,
actually check this over. Legal needs to check this over. There's too much gray area here.
I think we would want to start with legal checking it over first.
Right.
Because we know when the CAC starts in on it, that we want to instruct them to go.
right. That's my question is, are we tasking the CAC to look at this without any input from us or legal? Is that the right thing to do or not?
I think
don't
we would
think it-
wait and give the CAC more input next month, but go ahead, Jennifer.
So if I might make
That's what I
a
wanted to-
suggestion, kind of hearing the conversation, I think that the motion would be to table item 8B. I'm like, which letter are we on? Table item 8B until a future meeting occurring after this board has a chance to study the policy item, which is the use of PPRTA funds on EV chargers, to agenda for next month's cycle of CAC and PPRTA meetings, an agenda item to discuss those policy considerations, not giving the CAC direction to come up with a policy, but to consider at the higher level, the definitional level considerations for the board, and then the board to consider that with the CAC's input, my input, staff's input, sort of as a more policy-driven conversation next month.
Go ahead, Commissioner Geithner.
I just have a question for Jennifer Ivy. I appreciate that suggestion. The topic of looking at the statute and the legal question, in my mind, should come before even the policy discussion. Is that something that you're going to send that highlighted space, or would that be appropriate to have an executive session at our next meeting to have a discussion about that?
Yeah, so my thought was that this sort of highlighted piece would be part of a staff report that I would collaborate with Rick on. It would go to the CAC and come to the board as well with whatever CAC considerations. As I mentioned, it's no secret here. It's a gray area. We can also agenda an executive session. So if we have any legal thoughts that we want to have in an executive session, what I'm hearing from the board is you're not really ready for me to launch into a full-scale research project that's probably going to yield at the end of the day an answer that says, I don't know. Spoiler alert. But so that was sort of my thinking out loud.
Go ahead, Rick.
Jennifer might elbow me in the ribs, but I'm out of the 250 word definition of regional transportation system. There's about a dozen words that I think she agrees and I agree the board could interpret to allow these, and that is any improvement that permits people or goods to be transported or conveyed within a region by any means. Wouldn't that be EV chargers? It could be, but you don't have to agree that it is.
But play the devil's advocate, that could be buying cars for people. Right? We could just purchase cars. That does make it possible for them to convey things
Absolutely.
around the
That can
system.
be,
But that's not what we're,
that can be gas stations. Yes.
yeah. And I
So-
think I'm hearing a kind of a majority or a consensus that we don't want to go down that road to where we're heading off away from building roads, public transportation into something else, which is charging up private vehicles, which is what a gas station does for a combustion engine.
So if I may, I don't want to get too much into an unagendaed policy discussion today, just sort of to rein it back in. And I think this is a very fruitful conversation, but I just want to be mindful of the fact that this is not an agenda item for today. So I do think it's appropriate to have the discussion in session next
Yep.
month.
So I would, if Madam Chair, if you'd like, I'd make a motion to table 8B until PPRTA and the CAC have had an opportunity to evaluate this over the next month or two and develop policy.
Okay, is there a second for that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, and I would suggest, Jennifer has a plan on how to follow that through and agendize it. And so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, 8B. So now we are on to addendum item 8C, which is a proposal. Who wants to head that off? Jennifer?
Just because I was just preaching about not talking about things that aren't on the agenda. This also wasn't on the agenda. The board is not actually giving any approvals today on this item. We're really just looking for direction. So just so it's clear from a agenda and open meeting standpoint, this is just to provide direction, similar to not wanting to launch into a full-scale research project in EV chargers without board direction. I didn't want to launch into a full-scale drafting exercise here without a board thumbs up or thumbs down. And so that's the net result of what Gail and Rick are going to present, is that I'm just looking for some direction from the board if this is something you're interested in bringing back as a agenda item on February's agenda for consideration or not.
Okay, go ahead, Rick.
I'll just do the intro. Gail Sturdivant with the city has the opportunity and is time sensitive for a $2.6 million right-of-way acquisition for a PPRTA 3 capital project. And she's requesting that the board direct Jennifer Ivey to bring to the February cycle of the CACNA board a two-party IGA such that the PPRTA will reimburse the city for spending its non-RTA 2.6 million now to be reimbursed in 2025. Very similar to what the board just approved with Copper Ridge. Copper Ridge is spending money now and being reimbursed over the entire decade of PPRTA 3. Josh Palmer with the county also has a similar request. So that's my intro, and Gail and Josh can elaborate on the details.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Gail Sturdivant, City of Colorado Springs. So the city has two PPRTA 3 A-list projects. The Nevada Avenue reconstruction from Rock Island Railroad to Commerce Street. And the second one is the Nevada Avenue reconstruction from Commerce Street to Templeton Gap floodway. Those two projects would necessitate a purchase of railroad right-of-way that is roughly adjacent to Nevada. It's adjacent through most of it. It does cut through one small area where it's not adjacent. Then this right-of-way that parallels the existing Nevada Avenue right-of-way runs roughly from Fillmore on the south up to Winters on the north. There's a desire to have this property both for the for the roadway project, and then also this project between Nevada Avenue, this railroad property that we would hope to purchase, and there's the Birdsall power plant that Colorado Springs Utilities desires to do some security measures, and they've been working with us on the road development plans leading up to this project. The total property acquisition is actually, and Rick may not even know this, may be closer to like $3.1 million, and portion of that would be paid for by Colorado Springs Utilities because some of that ultimately would be transferred to them for their purposes. We estimate that the city's portion of doing this acquisition would be up to $2.6 million. There's an opportunity, BNSF is expressing interest in selling this property now, and they're giving us basically the first right of refusal to make this purchase. So we would like to be able to move ahead with this in 24. In doing so, the city's not really in a position to go and do this capital outlay, but they will allow me to use my salary and benefit savings as a loan for 24, if there's the opportunity to be reimbursed by PPRTA in the PPRTA 3 authorization years. Hopefully that was clear enough. I'd be happy to answer questions with that or provide additional explanation if needed.
Councilmember Helms.
And I think, so as I understand it, all we're looking for today is a thumbs up, not necessarily a vote to proceed, pursuing this, on the part of PPRTA.
Yeah, that's correct. So with the city of Colorado Springs, I would like to work with PPRTA to develop this IGA. So basically to get a reimbursement agreement put in place, and then I would bring this IGA back to the Colorado Springs City Council to also get their affirmation to enter into this IGA on this loan. This would happen before you would see any formal real estate transaction within the city of Colorado Springs. But it's an opportunity. We feel like it's important to move forward now as opposed to waiting and potentially losing this opportunity to purchase the
And
project.
this is on PPRTA 3's list.
It is. There are two projects adjacent to this that are on PPRTA 3's list.
Okay. Do I need to, so I don't need to make a motion. I just need to say, I recommend that we
Just give it a thumbs up.
approve this to go forward.
Yes. The county has a request as well, so yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the county has a similar request, similar to what the city is requesting. It's not a property acquisition, but in 2020 and 2021, the county funded a traffic impact study and safety analysis for the Baptist Hodgin roller coaster intersection. And it was determined that there were some significant intersection improvements necessary, which led us to including and ultimately getting approval to include that intersection as an RTA 3 A-list project. In prioritizing our upcoming program, we identified this as probably one of the top 2 or 3 projects we'd like to get started sooner rather than later. So before we took on any design efforts, we wanted to find out if it was appropriate and would receive support and approval from the board to something similar to the city is doing, is self-fund the design now. That way we are ready in 2025 as early as possible to get towards to construction, with the understanding that we would then be reimbursed for the design costs that we would expend now. We're not under the same time constraints that the city is under. It's just an effort to hit the ground running with PPRTA 3 with some of the significant projects that we've identified.
We do have Rick and then Commissioner Gonzalez.
The Baptist Hodgin roller coaster intersection improvement is the second bullet in the individual projects voter approved list for PPRTA 3.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thanks. I don't have an issue with this going forward for draft and looking into, but I do have a question. Where was the funding going to come from for both the county and the city? And I thought I heard maybe utilities. Did I hear utilities for the city one?
Yeah, Commissioner Gonzalez, Gail Stidham with the City of Colorado Springs. So the funding was going to come from PPRTA 3 funds. It's just, there's an opportunity to get a portion of this or that real estate acquisition now, as opposed to waiting until 25, which would be the earliest the money would be available. In this particular case, I would be getting some funds from Colorado Springs Utilities, but like with a lot of our projects, a lot of times utilities contribute a portion of money for the portions that they're responsible for in adjacent with our roadway work.
Okay, so from utilities now.
From utilities now and the City of Colorado Springs now, but PPRTA 3 would reimburse the city for the city's portion of that real estate purchase.
I understand where the money would come from in the future. What I've read in the paper is the city is cutting 10% operations across the board, including public safety. And so
yeah,
when this comes up for discussion next month, I'm going to ask a question of where's the money coming from if there's not money available?
Yeah, that's a great, I'm sorry, Commissioner, that is a great question. So the money is coming from 2023 salary and benefit savings within Public Works. Through 2023, with our cost saving measures, we have saved over $2.6 million in salary and benefits. So I'm going to be asking the city's finance to use that revenue that's saved in 23 to do a land purchase in 2024 and seek reimbursement for that money in 2025.
Again, and I don't mean to be like this. I'm gonna ask next month,
Mhm.
why is that not, why are those savings not going to public safety? Thank you.
And Commissioner, to answer your question for the county, that would most likely be from the city's the county's 2024 Road and Bridge Fund.
Okay, and again, I'm gonna ask the same thing on the county side. Is there not a better use for it? I know this is kind of like same thing. I'm gonna ask on both sides. Well, is there other areas that maybe this should be going for that's higher priority? Thanks.
Verification.
Okay,
Yeah.
Councilmember Donaldson?
Yeah, Gail, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think the difference with what Commissioner Gonzalez is pointing out is that if that money was spent on public safety, it wouldn't be reimbursed by PPRTA. It would just be 2.6 million would be gone from the, well, it wouldn't be gone, but it would be spent, be additional money spent versus right now it's essentially creative accounting and then we get paid in 25. Paid back by PPRTA, the city does.
I think if I tracked everything you were saying, Councilor Donaldson, that's correct.
Yeah.
That this, I would maybe say it a little bit differently and correct me if I misstate this or not misunderstand, but Public Works had so much money budgeted in 2023. We actually saved money, a lot of it through salary and benefit savings because we did not hire new staff to continue to perform our function. We're proposing to use that money that was unused in 23 for Public Works activity in 24 and then seek reimbursement because it would ultimately be a PPRT3 expense starting in 25, if that makes sense.
And the difference is, and I think Commissioner Gonzalez is asking a good question. If you took that money and it was used by CSPD, there is no fund that is going to repay the city as PPRTA would if it's used to
Yes,
purchase the rail easements.
yes, that's absolutely correct.
Okay, thank you.
There
Go
might be
ahead.
saved lives. I don't know. Again, I'm not against any of this. I'm just asking questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Commissioner. Go ahead, Jennifer, and then Councilmember Helms.
And I was just going to encourage the board to save the policy considerations for the agenda item next month.
Okay,
It's the slippery slope of letting you talk about something that's not on the agenda.
go ahead, Councilmember.
I know all
Helms.
those were covered exactly. I was going to
Okay,
say the same thing about the reimbursement. And the only other thing I would add is I think we took a 3.4% cut, not a 10% cut, as was mentioned. But that's it.
sure. Okay. All right. So I think we have thoroughly discussed that we do want to consider it next month as an item.
Perfect.
Okay.
We will agenda and I will prepare the agreements then. I wanted to be frugal with PPRTA funds and not be spending money and bring you something that you might say, well, we were not interested in this. So.
Okay. Thank you very much. That means that we can now move on to someone asked for 9A and 9B first, or is it Josh? You want?
9C first.
Okay.
I may have to leave a little early. I want to make sure that I was able to answer any questions on 9C.
All right. We are going to, because Josh is my county engineer, going to go ahead and go to 9C.
So this is the county's property acquisition report and summary. It's informational, but I don't know why it showed up as red, but it shouldn't be red. Nothing's wrong with it. But if there's any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Okay. Are there any questions on the counties? All right. Oh, yeah. Can you make it smaller next month? His came out small. Mine came out fairly big for some reason. So, all right. So that's just an informational item. Since there's no questions, we will go back to my constituent and city engineer, Gail Sturtevant.
And actually, I believe it's the first 9A is city transit. So I'm going to ask Lan to come and give you an update, the transit.
Yes, Lan,
Thank you.
come on up.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Congratulations, Chair and Vice Chair. Line Rail Transit Services Division Manager. In your packet today is for your information report on transit ridership and some highlights. I'm going to go to page 3 in our report, year-to-date information on ridership. We are tracking our year-to-date ridership recovery on the fixed route side of 90% pre-COVID level. We've been including this information for a few months now at the board and CAC request, and we did take a look at the national trend. There is a American Public Transit Association who does track this information. They aggregated a lot of different sized transit agencies, and they're looking at, as of September, about 77 to 78% of ridership compared to pre-COVID level. When they filter that information to mid-sized urban transit agency, which is between 200,000 to 1 million population, that's where we belong. They're actually looking at about 71% ridership compared to pre-COVID level. So we're trending ahead, but it's not exactly the same month information because their information is a little behind. So we'll keep monitoring that. We did receive 2 requests from the board in the last couple months. One is what does it look like apples to apples when we are looking at the same level of frequency? So we are putting that report together for next month. Hopefully we'll have the December information included in that report. The second request from the board in the last couple months is the unique riders. We've been reporting ridership information. As you know, the fixed route, the bus system, we do not ask for individual, and we're not able to track the individual passenger information. So what we did was we used some average information based on the fare boxes and what's the average usage of one ticket. And we came up, again, this is very not statistically valid, but the information we can gather based on the information we have, we're looking at least 18,000 unique riders on the fixed route side. Again, if I'm an occasional rider, I ride the bus from time to time, not every day making 3 or 2 trips, that number would be higher. But this is probably the minimum number of unique riders that we're looking at. Which represents about 3.3% of our service area population. Also in your packet are some highlights of transit activities. We were at downtown terminal around the holidays for a rider appreciation event, handed out hot cocoa, and we got a lot of positive comments. The CAC asked for Vanpool promotion information, so that's included in your packet as well. We're also very happy to share that the downtown bus terminal restrooms have been open. We opened the doors yesterday. We've had a lot of cleaning activities done at the bus terminal. So those restrooms will be open to our customers as well as bus drivers. The bus drivers are able to open the doors using their badge. And we have security guards on site to open the doors for our customers. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right. Any questions about the monthly transit report? Thank you, Lan.
I just have a comment.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Lan. And I think that's going to be really nice for the drivers because right now they're running to City Hall for their comfort needs and going back. So I'm really happy to hear that it's opened again.
Finally open.
Cleared
Yes.
up.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm glad the bathrooms are back open too. So that would be it for item 9A. Thank you, Lan. And item 9B, Gail.
Yes, item 9B is the city's change order log and real estate acquisitions. They are provided for the board's consideration in their packet as information, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Are there any questions on 9B? Okay, seeing no questions on that, we are on to item 9D, maintenance of effort reports.
Madam Chair, this is just an information item, a high profile reminder to everyone that the annual maintenance effort presentations are due at the February CAC board cycle of meetings. The appropriate member government staff members have been notified, and we look forward to receiving their reports.
Okay, wonderful. That would be 9D. 10A is an approval item. We have to approve the posting of our meeting locations. Rick?
Your board bylaws requires this. In the past, it's been that the board has approved the outside lower bulletin board that you pass by when you come in and out of the meeting, as well as the PPRTA website. So just looking for a motion to see if you want to approve those two locations again for this next calendar year.
Question, are you running into any issues with the ADA accessibility on the website?
Yes,
Okay.
I'll leave it at that for
You're
now.
not alone.
It's being researched, looking for guidance from.
Compliant by July 1.
It would be good if the standards were available.
from
It would
the
be
state.
good if there were a lot of things available, especially some exclusions, and especially for towns like us where we have planning commission packages that we normally post online. Are those going to be one of the exceptions or not? Because drawings and whatnot are just not going to work.
So Commissioner Geithner, I think, is ready to make a motion, but she can also tell you about one of the bills we're sponsoring at the state legislature we hope to have.
Yeah, I'll just say quickly, we can talk about that afterward, but it is a CCI priority. So looking forward to having more conversation on that. But I would love to make a motion to approve the posting location as stated by Rick.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The specific bill is to actually give us more time. I think the specific bill is to try to extend the time a little bit, right? Okay, because it's a big project. Let's see, now we're up to the next letter, which is letter 10C. We already did Dan Jablan, which was 10B, our staff field report. Rick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is just my reporting back the results and the nearly perfect compliance with the accomplishments by the 6 member governments in the last quarter. Just my drive around windshield survey. Just an
Okay.
information item. I'd be glad to take any questions.
All right, any questions? There being no questions, are there any announcements by any members? Item number 11. Okay. Then we will entertain a motion to adjourn. If you want to move to adjourn, or I'll just adjourn. Okay. We are adjourned.